Midnight in the Grove of Venus, August 1784. A shadow steps from the manicured hedges of Versailles. A desperate man drops to his knees, clutching a rose, believing he has finally secured the forgiveness of his queen. He cannot see the face hidden beneath the dark hood, nor does he realize that the woman whispering pardons is not French royalty but a Parisian streetwalker hired for the night. This single, orchestrated illusion would become the fulcrum upon which an entire empire would eventually break. The object that necessitated this elaborate theatrical deception was a monstrosity of wealth, a diamond necklace so staggeringly expensive it defied comprehension. Commissioned years earlier by a dying king for his mistress, it contained 2,800 carats of precious stones strung together in heavy, cascading festoons. When the king perished, the jewelers were left with an unsellable masterpiece, a glittering financial anchor that threatened to drag them into ruin. They needed a buyer. What they found instead was a predator perfectly calibrated to exploit the toxic, rumor-filled atmosphere of the royal court. Enter Jeanne de Valois Saint-Remy, the Countess de la Motte. Born into crushing poverty but possessing a verified, albeit distant, bloodline to the ancient kings of France, Jeanne harbored a deep, festering resentment toward the aristocracy that had forgotten her. She was a master of what modern investigators might term affinity fraud, the practice of exploiting shared associations or trust within a specific closed group. By weaponizing her royal lineage, she infiltrated the fringes of the court, projecting an aura of immense yet entirely fabricated influence. Her perfect mark was Cardinal Rohan, a man of immense wealth and religious authority, yet utterly paralyzed by his social exile. He had offended Queen Marie Antoinette years prior and was desperate, almost pathologically so, to claw his way back into her inner circle. Jeanne recognized this glaring vulnerability. She positioned herself as a secret confidant to the queen, offering Rohan a clandestine path to redemption. It was a classic manipulation, preying on a desperate man's deepest insecurities to blind him to the glaring inconsistencies of her story. The snare was set with meticulous sociopathic precision. Jeanne began forging a series of intimate, affectionate letters, supposedly written by the queen herself, addressed to the cardinal. These missives, penned by Jeanne's lover, were a masterclass in psychological manipulation. They slowly eroded Rohan's grip on reality, a historical instance of gaslighting, where the victim is manipulated into doubting their own perception and brought to believe a secret relationship existed entirely in the shadows. He was directed to provide vast sums of money to Jeanne for the queen's supposed secret charities. The phantom letters culminated in that fateful midnight rendezvous in the gardens of Versailles. The brief, shadowy encounter with the disguised prostitute cemented the cardinal's absolute belief in Jeanne's narrative. The hook was set so deeply that when Jeanne presented Rohan with a forged contract, ostensibly signed by Marie Antoinette, authorizing the purchase of the infamous diamond necklace on secret credit, the cardinal did not hesitate. He acted as the guarantor, eagerly securing the jewels on behalf of the monarch he believed he was finally serving. The handover was an exercise in brazen audacity. In a dimly lit Parisian apartment, Cardinal Rohan presented the magnificent necklace to a man he believed was the queen's trusted valet. In reality, the valet was yet another of Jeanne's accomplices. The moment the door closed, the illusion evaporated. The royal con had been executed flawlessly. The necklace never reached the neck of Marie Antoinette. Instead, the glittering masterpiece was immediately subjected to brutal, silent destruction. Jeanne's husband fled across the English Channel to London, where he began prying the priceless diamonds from their intricate gold settings with a heavy blade. The stones were sold off piecemeal on the black market, their origins obscured in the murky underworld of European jewelers. The physical evidence of the crime was being systematically erased. It was scattered into 1,000 untraceable fragments. But the financial debt remained, a ticking time bomb waiting to detonate within the halls of Versailles. When the first massive payment came due, the desperate jewelers, having received nothing, bypassed the Cardinal and went directly to the Queen. They presented their demands for the staggering sum, citing the contract she had supposedly signed. The revelation struck Marie Antoinette with disorienting force. She stared at the jewelers, completely bewildered. She had never ordered the necklace. She had never signed the contract. She had not spoken to Cardinal Rohan in years. The terrifying reality dawned on her. Someone had stolen her identity, weaponized her reputation, and orchestrated a monumental fraud in her name. The profound violation of this betrayal left the Queen exposed, a victim of a crime she could not even comprehend. The furious monarch demanded an immediate public reckoning. On the Feast of the Assumption, as the entire court gathered in their finest attire, Cardinal Rohan, dressed in his magnificent pontifical robes, was summoned before the king and queen. When confronted with the forged letters and the missing necklace, the cardinal's defense crumbled into incoherent panic. He realized, in front of the sovereigns of France, that he was not a trusted confidant. He was the ultimate humiliated dupe. The king's reaction was swift and devastating. Cardinal Rohan was arrested on the spot, marched through the crowded, stunned galleries of Versailles, and thrown into the Bastille. Within days, the authorities closed in on Jeanne de Valois-Saint-Remy. The architect of the grand deception was dragged from her provincial home, her web of lies finally collapsing under the weight of royal fury. The quiet, insidious fraud was now a public spectacle. The subsequent investigation peeled back the layers of Jeanne's dark enterprise. Court documents indicate that investigators meticulously traced the forged signatures, the hired prostitute, and the fenced diamonds in London. The sheer audacity of the scheme shocked the magistrates. They were forced to confront a disturbing reality. The sanctity of the royal signature, the very symbol of divine right and absolute power, had been effortlessly mimicked by a desperate, impoverished noblewoman. The trial of the diamond necklace affair became a sensational, deeply polarized circus before the Parliament of Paris. It was no longer just about stolen jewels. It was a referendum on the monarchy itself. The public, already seething with resentment toward the lavish spending of the court, devoured the lurid details of midnight rendezvous and secret letters. They did not see Marie Antoinette as the victim of identity theft. Instead, they saw her as the secret mastermind, a corrupt queen who had manipulated the cardinal to satisfy her own insatiable greed. The verdict delivered a catastrophic blow to the crown. Cardinal Rohan, despite his monumental foolishness and complicity in the unauthorized purchase, was acquitted of all fraud charges. The court essentially ruled that it was entirely plausible for the Queen of France to engage in such deceitful, clandestine behavior. The acquittal was a public exoneration of the dupe, but a devastating, implicit condemnation of the victim. Marie Antoinette was legally cleared but permanently convicted in the court of public opinion. Jeanne de Valois-Saint-Remy did not escape the law's brutal reach. She was found guilty, sentenced to public whipping, and branded on both shoulders with a red-hot iron bearing the letter Phi for volus, the French word for thief. Witnesses stated she fought the executioner with such feral desperation that the iron slipped, branding her on the breast. It was a horrific, visceral punishment intended to assert royal authority, but it only served to turn a convicted con artist into a perverse martyr for the anti-royalist cause. The psychological damage to Marie Antoinette was irreparable. The betrayal by Jeanne was compounded by the ultimate betrayal of her own people. The Queen retreated further into her private circles, deeply wounded by the realization that her subjects actively wanted to believe the worst of her. The affair stripped away the last remnants of royal mystique, replacing it with a toxic narrative of corruption, deceit, and moral decay at the very heart of Versailles. The echoes of that manipulation lingered long after the trial concluded. Jeanne eventually escaped prison, fleeing to London, where she published sensational, highly fictionalized memoirs. She doubled down on her lies, painting the Queen as a vindictive, sexually deviant tyrant who had orchestrated the entire affair to ruin the cardinal. These pamphlets flooded France, acting as venom in the veins of an already fracturing society. The diamond necklace affair was not the sole cause of the French Revolution, but it was the accelerant that turned smoldering discontent into an unstoppable inferno. It proved that the monarchy was not untouchable, that its symbols could be forged and its reputation destroyed by a few ambitious fraudsters. The trust between the sovereign and the citizenry, the fragile, invisible contract that holds a nation together, had been irrevocably shattered. When the guillotine finally fell on Marie Antoinette years later, the shadow of the diamond necklace still loomed over her. The revolutionary tribunals cited her alleged role in the affair as proof of her treason against the French people. The illusion crafted in the dark gardens of Versailles had metastasized into a fatal reality. A crime of pure financial greed had been weaponized into a political death sentence. This infamous fraud stands as a chilling testament to the cascading power of deception. It reveals how the exploitation of a single, desperate ego can unravel the fabric of an entire society. The con artists sought only diamonds, but in their ruthless pursuit, they forged the key that would ultimately unlock the gates of revolution. In the end, the most profound theft was not of precious stones, but of the very truth itself, leaving a legacy of broken trust that would drown a kingdom in blood.